Hello, this is Mr. Dufresne. For today's lesson, we are going to start our unit on groove. There's three concepts I want you to become familiar with: groove, time feel, and steady beat. So groove, my definition is the rhythmic aspect of the song that propels the music forward, making it feel good to the listener. So the groove, I think, is the most identifying characteristic of different styles of music. I think it's the groove that makes that kind of music, whatever it is, whatever kind of music we're talking about. Reggae, for example, has a definite groove that when you hear that, if you know about reggae, that groove jumps out at you and you know that this is reggae. Disco is another kind of groove that's very identifiable. You hear that, and what makes that disco is the groove. Rock and roll, jazz, bluegrass music, country music. I think the identifying factor within all those, what makes those kind of music, those particular musics, is the groove. All right. So going along with groove is the phrase time feel. So it's very similar to groove. Time feel is the way rhythms are played that determine how the music feels. And then last, the most common term here that all of you should know if you've been studying general music since from kindergarten on, music teachers talk about steady beat. Steady beat is the main pulse of the music. That's very important. Musicians are judged by how accurately they play in time with the steady beat. Now today we are going to focus on the concept of 4 on the floor. All right, I have an article here for you by Nick C. Mispronounce his last name. And I've provided a link elsewhere so that you can get in here and look at his article on this as well. But I'm just going to point out a couple things from his article. He talks about here, for all of you non-drummers out there, you may not know exactly what 4 on the floor is, but I would argue you've heard it. It's a very simple pattern played with a bass drum, accenting quarter notes in common time. Common time is another way to say 4/4, the time signature 4/4. And we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So on every beat, we're going to have an accented note. He goes on to talk about that 4 on the floor is primarily used in EDM, electric dance music, and disco. All right, so to recap here, 4 on the floor has the bass drum, also known as the kick drum, on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've added here that 4 on the floor may also be supported by the electric bass or double bass. 4 on the floor is primarily identified or associated with electronic dance music, EDM, disco, reggae. In jazz, we use the term feathering. So in jazz, when we have 4 on the floor, the drummer is playing very softly with a very light touch, but he's still playing on all 4 beats. So now we're going to go into Bandlab, which is how we are going to create music for much of the year. We're going to be using Bandlab. So we'll talk about key concepts, and then you will demonstrate your understanding of those by creating compositions or improvisations here in Bandlab. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to deal with the metronome setting. Now when you open up Bandlab, yours probably will be set, it will say 120 right here in this box. So we're going to click on that first of all, and we're going to change that to 60. Most of the time, we're going to be creating at 60 beats per minute. That's considerably slower than 120, which is the default setting. 60 beats per minute is the speed of the clock. If you watch the second hand on a clock tick around, that's 60 beats per minute. The next step is to go into settings. I'm going to go to metronome settings. And you can also change the tempo here as well, but it takes longer. And then if you would like to change the sound of the metronome, you do that here. Click on this drop-down menu, and you can change the sound. But I'm going to leave it at default. Then we'll also need to change the count in duration. Yours will probably be set to off, and we need to change that to 2 bars. Then we just click anywhere, and we're out of that. The next step is to enable. Mine is enabled already here, you can see, but we need to go into settings and enable metronome. When you click into yours, you're probably going to see this. It'll be white. We're going to click enable, turn screen over here. That means we're going to hear the metronome count in. So the metronome is going to give us a click that allows us to play, that we're going to play along with, that helps us keep the music organized. That's that steady beat that we're going to have in the background. A lot of times in my general music classes in the past, I've used the app Drum Genius, and so we have those drum grooves going in the background providing us with a steady beat. In Bandlab, we're going to have this metronome. All right, the next step here is to change the instrument to drum kits. When you click in here, you're going to see piano first. All right, so now if it's set at piano, which it normally is, we're going to click in and we're going to find drum kits. All right, now the next thing with the drum kits is we can choose which drum kit we want. The default setting, is classic rock. If you want to click down in that drop down menu, there's a whole host of options here. So I'm going to scroll through, and if you want, you can hear how these sound, and you just click on the arrow here and it'll give you a little demonstration. And I'm going to go with the hip hop kit. All right, then I'm just going to click on that, and now you can see here, got the hip hop kit. All right, so if you click on the drums, this is the tom, ride cymbal, tom, tom, another cymbal, hi-hat here, snare drum, cowbell. We do not need more cowbell at this point. And then your kick drum or bass drum. So right now I'm using the touchpad, but you can also use these letters. In my experiments, I find that it's easier to use the key here. So I'm going to use S when it comes down to using the kick drum today. So that's what we're going to be using. S. We're going to be using the kick drum sound if you're comfortable, or if you're on a device that doesn't have the touchpad, just you can use whatever you want here. All right, so now we're going to get into the actual recording of our 4 on the floor. Let me talk a little bit about counting measures. So I told you that when we enabled the metronome settings, we're going to get 2 bars before we start playing. So that's 8 beats. We are in 4/4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's what's happening here. Now, when we want to count these out to keep track, we change the first number. So that first 8 beats, I'm going to count like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to start playing. Now, I'd like you to create 4 measures today. So we will count, I will count as I'm playing the snare drum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Pardon me, I said snare drum. I meant to say bass drum or kick drum. That's what we're going to be playing. All right, so I'm all set to go here. I'm going to click the red button. We're going to get started. I will count off for you as we hear these opening 2 measures. Then I will be using the S key to tap along with the steady beat 4 measures. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. And I press the red button again. And now we see a representation of what I've played here on the bass drum. Now I'm going to go up to the arrow here. All right, click that. Now let's listen to it. See how well I did. All right, and I press pause. And now I felt like, I'm going to take it back here to the beginning. I felt like at the beginning especially, I was a little behind the beat and it took a little while to sink in. Now sometimes on the devices, that could just be my error, my human error. But also I know that on some of the devices, sometimes there's a little latency, it doesn't quite line up. So I'm actually not happy with that. So I'm going to do that again. All right, and if I press record, it will just record over that. The other thing I was do is I could click on here, I could click on this and also cut it. All right, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to record again. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Stop. And I think that's better for our purposes. I will leave that. So you have to get comfortable with, tapping it and the reaction time that creates that. So that's how we've got our first bass drum track. There's our 4 on the floor. And now, depending on how much time we have, students in class will also be doing this along with the people that are learning at home online. If you have time, then the next step is going to be to add a bass. And I'm going to go ahead and go through that on the video. If you're in class with me, depending on how things are progressing, that might be on a separate day. All right, so we go over here to add track, and this is one of the most exciting things I think about using Bandlab is that we can layer tracks over top of one another or multi-track. So in general music class up till now, if you've had me, we compose one little project every day. Now we can really spend time and really develop a piece of music by adding multiple layers. So I click on the add track, and we're going back to this MIDI instruments. Notice it's gone back to piano here, but we are going to support the 4 on the floor with the bass. So I'm looking for bass. It's right at the top. And there's a drop-down menu, and you can choose any of these bass sounds that you like. All right, and so I'm going to go with funky slap bass. Click on that, and it changes here. All right. Now we have this keyboard down here. We haven't used that yet. So we've got the notes on the piano here, moving left to right, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we're back. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. The letters here correspond with what key you would type in or hit on your keyboard to get that sound. We're going to avoid the black keys for now and for most of the initial lessons here in general music, and we're just going to focus on the white keys. There's an octave here, so this changes how high or how low the bass is. Now, I personally want this right now to be a little higher. You do not have to do this. You can just leave it set. I'm going to go up, and I want my note to be a little higher. And I think I'm going to go with this F here. All right. You can try and hear the sounds, hear how they are. So I'm going to go with the F, which is V. All right, V on the keyboard for me. Now I'm going to press the red button again, and I will count off. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put it on beats 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and we get 4 measures of this bass. 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. And I'm done. I press pause. Back and want to hear how that sounds. And for our purposes, that's good enough. You know, you can get very specific with all this and very attention to detail, and you know, depending on how happy you are with it. If I wanted to go back and maybe clean up some things at the very beginning, I thought it was a little not quite lining up, but for our purposes, that's good enough. All right. So now I'm going to press save, and then I'm going to go to exit. All right. Now here's my new project. We're going to click on that. I'm going to name this. Rename, sorry, the dots here. Rename. All right, and we are going to call this 4 OTF. For 4 on the floor, you can see I've already was using, trying this out, how this was going to work. All right, so the next thing, I'm going to put my last name. That's what you're going to do. You can put your last name, and then first initial, then grade level, followed by homeroom teacher. So 3rd grade, doing this first. And then let's say you're in Mrs. Price's class, you put Price. Right? Or Mrs. Meissen or Mrs. Cayuta, however that is. Let's say that's what you're gonna do. I'm gonna change this for my own purposes. Put demo and confirm. Now I see over here, here's my project. I can go in there. And invite collaborators. This is the last step today. Invite collaborators, and you are going to invite me. All right, Dufresne M. I didn't get my whole last name in my email. 16 years ago when I first started. So it's Dufresne M at hollyacademy.org. All right, and in the message, if you want, put 40TF and your name or some happy message. Hopefully you enjoyed that. This is our first lesson here with Bandlab. And we send the invite. And that is the end of our first lesson, 4 on the floor in the groove time feel steady beat unit. Thank you very much. And we will have more